Mm, okay. Interesting. Interesting. Show my face. Yeah. Okay, I think this is good because like a cover page. Nice, 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 nice. Must not say time. Auto come in. Mm, correct. But B, you need to go in because if they type in the comments, you can type in response. It's in the group chat. It will play some music. I think don't know can play from my iPad or not because mine is YouTube Premium. Yeah. I think can at the background, right? I try. But you're on YouTube live there. Okay, let me try. Two, um, how do I increase the volume? Because I cannot increase the volume. I cannot. Mm-mm. Use my phone also can actually. I think the girls are texting you, Papa. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is it clear? I think later I should play this as a background or just off it. Off. I'm wearing my lucky color today. Yellow. Hmm.
Do you remember this called? Do you remember this called? Yes, I will ask you how or really right? Yeah. What do you want to see? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I reached that. Mm.
Okay, it's the first time I'm doing this webinar and YouTube live at the same time. So for those of you who are watching my YouTube live, we're gonna start in another 5 more minutes while more and more of our attendees are coming in. So hang in there. We are gonna start in another 5 minutes. So if you wanna go straight to the content, you can just scroll up to 5 or 6 minutes later, and then you'll be able to watch the video if what you're watching right now is a replay. So it's the first time I'm doing a YouTube live and webinar at the same time. So if there is any technical error, please pardon me. And I hope everything will go smoothly for the rest of the session. Thank you for tuning in. We will start at 8:05. Hello, I'm starting to see more people coming in. Hi, Jay, and hi, Elaine. And as we wait for more people to come in, welcome to the very first webinar of 2026. I know that 2025 has outperformed way more than what we expected. And congratulations for any of you holding on to any properties. We are expecting a very good increment in our own property for the past few years. And right now, we're going to enter 2026. And the very biggest question that most of us, if not all of us, are wondering is where exactly is the property market heading next? If I'm considering to upgrade or restructure my current portfolio, what should I look out for, and what are the signs that I should be mindful about? So in this seminar today, we will exactly be covering all of this. And we will also be sharing with you some of the data and stats that you must never miss, as well as answer a few key things is what actually drives the market next, and certain things that cannot be changed that are, hard and fast by, way that you have to remember. So do try to take some notes if you know some of the pointers benefits you. And you know me, I welcome questions anytime. And if I can't answer your questions immediately, you have my number, reach out to me, and I will always attend to you with the fastest speed I can. So as we're waiting for the rest of the people to come in, let's give it another minute or two, and then we shall be able to start. And I'll try to end by about 1.5 hour time. All right? Hi, Jay. Have you gotten your dinner already? I hope you have taken your dinner. Okay. How do I drag this? Okay. Not really familiar with the. Okay. So we are waiting for the rest of the people to come in, hopefully all of you already have have a great day and a dinner. And again, for those new people who is coming in, do know that the topic today is to address the key question that you may have. Is that what is going to be happening in the year 2026? if you're considering to restructure or thinking about how to move forward with your property plans, this webinar will definitely benefit you because I have literally spent tons and tons of hours doing all the research for you so you don't have to. So in another 1.5 minutes more, we're going to start. I'm seeing more people coming in already. That's great. Appreciate all your punctuality. We shall start at 8:05. Meanwhile, if you want to chat, feel free to just type in the comments. And if you are doing YouTube with me, oh yeah, so for those of you who may not know, we are also streaming to YouTube live at the same time. So if we were to see any YouTube inquiries, we will also welcome and we will answer them accordingly. Danish, you can see the comments, if any, right? The YouTube. Thank you. Right. 8:05, let's go. Okay, so good evening to all of my friends and attendees. You may have seen me for the first time. You may not have seen me for the first time. It doesn't matter. My name is Kelly, and I will be your speaker for this evening. I want to share with you that this is exactly my passion. I love doing research and looking through what is going to happen in the market, especially for the beginning of the year where a lot of us are having a lot of question marks. Whether is there going to be an economic crisis, which I do hear from one or two of my clients, and will we still be able to upgrade at this point of time? And then with inflation rising, does it affect the market? And also with the interest coming down already for the past 1 year plus, will there be a rebound? And most importantly, for those of us who are waiting for this golden moment, will property really crash like how it did happen in the year 2008? If it didn't crash, will there be another correction? So henceforth, we will be sharing with you what is going to happen in 2026. And before that, let's look at how 2025 property has performed. In here, you can see that the HDB resale market has gone up by 2.9% in the year 2025. And this is actually the slowest growth since 2019. Well, I know some of us who might have friends looking around for HDB, and even I have a lot of clients also considering HDB. Previously, in the early half of 2025, I have heard a lot of complaints saying that they cannot get anything within 500,000, and that's true. Fast forward to second half of 2025, they cannot get anything at 520,000. So is there really are there really, do you really see an increase in HDB prices? The answer is yes. But however, it's actually slower at the second half of 2025. And that is the reason why some of us who are trying to sell our HDB, we may find that we do take a longer time to see response, or we do take a longer time to see buyers actually giving in sincere offer or no offer at all. So you're not the only one because it's actually a market sentiment. And why is this happening? Later on, I will be explaining to you. Moving forward, knowing that the market has still inched up by a slower growth at 2.9%, if you track back to how year-on-year or quarter-on-quarter change, you can notice that HDB actually in 2021 has seen a 12.7% quarter-on-quarter change on the whole. And then for 2022, you can notice that it's a 10.4% growth, and it's starting to show signs of coming down, which is the reason why in 2023 is only 4.9, and moving forward, 2024 was another increase that went up by 9.7%, and that is actually why you realize you cannot get anything at 500,000 and 520,000. And now last year in the year 2025, we still see slower growth by at 2.9%. With this slowing growth that we are beginning to observe, there could be a very good chance that in 2026, those who are holding on to a HDB may not actually get to enjoy very fast transactions as how it was happening at the earlier half of 2025. The reason why is because a lot of BTO flats has already been announced in the news that they will be launching 55,000 BTO units from 2025 to 2027. This means that our government is actually trying to moderate HDB prices, and they want to do it steadily. So among these, right, out of these 55,000 BTO flats that will be launching in 2025 to 2027, there will be 3,001 of them will be launching in October 2025, which has already finished. And as in this is actually to address the fact that to help those buyers who are more urgent for a house to have shorter waiting time. So if you notice that in quarter 3 to quarter 4 during that period, as I was selling a HDB flat, I noticed that the amount of buyers who are actually viewing a house starts to reduce significantly. And with this news, it actually explains why, because our government is in the picture to try to regulate it. This is also to help you to understand, like now you know about HDB performance. For private sector, actually we also start to see that the prices have started to mellow down. What does it mean? It means that if you see the Singapore private property prices year on year change, from 2015 to 2025, there has also been some adjustments. So by looking at the price index and also what has been happening during that period, you will notice that from 2015 all the way to 2020, the numbers are most of the time in single digit or 0 point something, slightly negative. But come forward to 2021 onwards, you notice that there was actually a very big spike or jump at 12.7% and 10.4%. While in 2023, it actually starts to normalize at 4.9%, and 2024 to 2025 also experienced a more regulated growth period. So with this stabilizing or slower growth gradually, one can start to notice that if I'm considering to resize my HDB or maybe upgrade my HDB to another, maybe a resale EC or private property, we can start seeing that market is a bit more stable for us to enter or transact in the market. So further on, we also see that there is a news that is announced that our government is trying to trim the public housing land supply, which means that we may be always hearing that in the year 2025 and 2024, back to back, there's a lot of new launches and stuff. And because of that, a lot of my clients are also asking, will there be a situation where there will be oversupply and eventually starting to see that property prices may come down, especially in the private sector? Well, the thing is that the answer could be true because our government is trying to control the property supply at this point of time so that the prices are more regulated. Why? Because if they actually release too many lands at the same time, it may actually cause the property sector to go down by a lot because it's all about supply versus demand. And as such, even though they are still releasing land for sale, they are putting them under the reserve list and only releasing them if the bids are of the amount that our government wants it. So under the public housing supply on the confirmed list, you can see that the next 6 months will actually fall by 6.1%, resulting in about 4,725 units. This is also a move to control this upcoming uncertain economic climate, which means our government is also trying to observe upcoming in the next 6 months down the road. How will the private sector move? How will people's receptiveness be towards the private property market? Nonetheless, the reserve list will still be continually be put up for tender, and if the price is right, our government will then release them. So in summary, for 2025 performance, what you can notice that is HDB's overall price index has shown a 6.8% dip from quarter 3 to quarter 4 in 2025. And as BTO and SBS supply will continue to increase up to 55,000 from 2025 to 2027. And this is actually aimed to moderate HDB's resale prices. For private residential, we have also seen a 6.8% dip in price index, and supply will actually fall to 4,725 units, which will then help to maintain the private prices, not to let it go up too much or come down too much. And most GLS will be put on reserve list for bid based on market situation. And some of the factors that our government will be looking at will be interest rates, inflation, economic growth, employment levels, as well as government policies, whether there's a need for cooling measures and tax and stuff like that. And of course, global factors like how are the external, the macro part, like US Fed's decision and stuff. So this is what is happening for 2025. Fast forward to 2026, since all of those that I have mentioned, you may have already heard it in my previous webinars last year. They may sound very familiar to you at this point of time. The question is, what kind of market should we really be expecting in the year 2026? In order for us to understand this, firstly, our government already mentioned that they are trying to release out the wait out period for our folks who are trying to sell their HDB to buy, no, for our folks who already sold their private to buy a HDB. The initial reason why they came out with this ruling was because they wanted to control the pricing. And now they're actually excited to want to lift up this ruling. But in order for them to execute this, the price of HDB must really stabilize. That is also the reason why they are always announcing that they are going to release more intensively the BTO supply and the sale of balance flat supply in this upcoming next 2 years. So once HDB prices starts to stabilize, you may expect that they may really work on releasing this wait out period for private home downsizers. Second, also, they will also continually to ramp up BTO supply and let all of us know that they are going to work on this so that the buyers and the sellers want to be prepared that our government is trying to moderate the price. And if you're considering to sell your property at this time, do be mindful that there's one thing that HDB will definitely do, which is by controlling the valuation. Now, a lot of the sellers like to price their property in a way that they feel and they think can sell at this price. But there's always this thing when HDB sends a valuer down, they will try to regulate the market by controlling the amount of valuation that is given over once someone transacts with an OTP. So take, for example, last year when I transacted one with record price in Punggol, it was a recently MOP unit and we managed to sell it at 860,000 thereabout. And over there has been no transactions that can support 860,000. So what HDB did was they actually gave a valuation that is 760,000, which means that the acceptable selling price of this unit at this floor level, at this condition, was supposed to be at 760,000. But since we sold it at 860,000, of course and definitely our government will come in and let the buyer and seller settle amongst themselves for the COV. And I'm very, very certain in 2026, this will be a repeated pattern in order for our prices to start to moderate. And sellers, if you're thinking to sell your house, there might be a good chance that you may not get to see a match value situation so readily because that is an active move from our government continually with the release of BTO and sale of balance flat. Second, if you are selling a house and expecting your house to be sold very quickly, the answer should be not so soon because amount of demand in the market for a HDB flat may start tapering down because most people will rather choose to go for BTO and SBF as their priority. After all, most Singaporeans who wants to buy a HDB always try to start off with a BTO. So maybe I may say, gone are the days where you can expect to put it up for sale and sell it within 1-2 weeks or 1-2 viewings. The odds could be lower, so try to moderate your selling price so that you can actually move forward with your plans easily. And as for buyers will also be very well-versed to understand that as they start to see transactions being lowered and lowered each time, they will also be unable to offer a price that most of the sellers may want. So this is a relationship to share with you between BTO and SBF supply versus HDB resale price index. Over here, you can notice that the BTO and sale of balance flat supply, as they are actually increasing in the supply, the rates of the resale price index may not actually go up so steeply. Although as a whole from 2019 to 2025, you can see that the price has still seen an overall price trend that is upwards. However, if you realize that in the year 2020, when there was a 16,000 of BTO released in the market and 5,002 of sale of balance flat released in the market, the rate of growth over here usually spills over to the next part. And so if you're expecting over here in 2022 to 2023, there's a total of almost 50,000 of BTO supply at that year. And this is where you can start to see that actually the growth starts to slow down as well. So will the prices continue to go up? Well, the chance could be maybe because everything will start to become more and more expensive. So it is inevitable that the prices may start to go up, but slowly. So therefore, we are actually trying to fight between a supply versus demand situation. And if you want to really know whether the market is going up or down, always take reference to whether our government is actively introducing BTO and sale of balance flat supply. This is also a chart to show you the relationship between BTO application rates versus HDB resale price index. So over here, you can notice that for BTO application volume in the year 2022, the rate of HDB price index actually starts to see a very steep dip until 4.9% in the year 2023. And alongside in 2023 to 2024, as there are lesser BTO released in the market, you can also start to see that the resale price index also went up. And once there's an increase of BTO and BTO application, the resale price index also starts to see gradual shift. So there is definitely a direct relation between supply versus demand, and of course, buyers prioritizing first home as a BTO, then a resale property. So the influx of MOP flats in 2026 is an additional news that you also want to take note, because most of the time we are only focusing on the supply being introduced from BTO and sale balance flat. But at the same time, we also cannot neglect the fact that in the year 2020, to those people who has purchased a BTO in the year 2020, over here, 2022 to 2023, 2020, 2021, all this, they could have already been starting to take keys gradually over these next few years, especially in 2022 and 2023, when you realize that the amount of construction of BTO is quite high at that time. So if you add a 3 to 5 years of holding period and also MOP, you can also see that there's going to be an influx of MOP flats in the year 2026. And this could also further moderate the HDB resale flat prices. So in other words to say, if I were to imagine HDB resale flat prices, I would say that actually is correlated. Is correlated with BTO here. Is correlated with BTO or sale of balance flat. And also MOP units, which will increase the supply, because people who want to take keys to their BTO, they will now have to sell off their MOP units to go and take their BTO, which I see quite often. And if during this period, the supply over here is actually increasing, the resale flat prices will inevitably start coming down. So if you want to plan your exit, do be mindful that 2026 is the beginning of a possibility that you might start seeing your prices come down, and therefore taking action before the real dip could benefit you in the long run. So this will share with you that actually HDB volume does dropped by 2,944 units, which means that normally if you see HDB resale volume, you can see that there's about 26,000 of resale flats being sold in 2025. And this, even though 26,000 sounds like a lot, it is still the lowest resale volume since 2020. So if you look at 2020, you can realize that these are all the resale volume transacted during this year on year. But in the year 2025, there's only a total of 26,000 as compared to all of them. So 2020 is about 24,000 and 2021 is 31,000 of resale volume. During that time, probably BTO supplies were low. And 2022, 2023 were also 27 to 28,000. So actually 2025 has started to see a bit of reduction in the demand, not too much, by 2,944. Maybe if we fast forward to 2026, it could be a good chance that the numbers could be even lesser. Can you help me to reduce the aircon? Very cold, actually, shivering. Thank you. Yeah, so far, is there any questions that you guys over have? Today, I have a very quiet group of people here. I'm going to continue if there's no questions, so I try to finish in time, all right? So why HDB owner exit right now is your best opportunity? Because now we understand that our private residential prices has actually shown a slowing down effect. And HDB is also going to slow down in terms of the demand. So is there actually a good chance for us to sell high and cash out for maximum, because we know it's still not the lowest yet? Yet at the same time, in the private sector, it has already shown an overall dip in terms of the trend. So this is the year-on-year change from 2021 at 10.6 to 8.6 to 6.8 to 3.9 and now 3.4. Okay, so let's take a look at the foreign resale flats in the matured towns to give you a bit of sensing what do I actually mean. So a lot of us like to hold on to our HDB, telling ourselves that, hey, maybe if we hold on to it for a bit longer, we may see an even higher price. So in matured area, the towns that actually saw straight 2 years of slower price increase, this is data that we have retrieved from our PropNext, is to let you know that if you see over here, right, there are still a slower growth, or rather there's still growth in overall 4-room resale flats in matured town. But however, if you see over here in terms of the different estates, you can see that Bukit Merah, Pasir Ris, and Serangoon are all the matured area. In the year 2024, the owners could have already exited at 6.05%, and also 7.23% and 6.89% in the year when the index were at that time. However, if they choose to hold on to it, they may start to realize that actually the price has started to show a bit of softening. That's why the percentage became 4.43%, 7.1, and 6.68. Although it's not very significant, but if we continue to hold on to them for a longer period of time, maybe the number could have been 3, could have been 6, and could have been 5 point something percent. So is it a risk that we could have avoided? That's a question we may want to ask ourselves. And for the 5-room resale flat in non-matured towns, we also have seen growth at about 80,000 overall from 2023 to 2025. And these are also straight 2 years of slower price increase. This is an example in Punggol. In Punggol area, in the year 2024, the owners also similarly could have exited at 6.89%. And in the year 2025, if they choose to still hold on to it, maybe they could have sold it as 800,000 during that time. But if they don't exit at that time, they could see themselves selling it at 750,000 instead. And this is actually very real because there was one unit in Punggol that I actually met the owner. During 2024, when she was thinking about selling, she could sell the unit at about 890,000. It was an EA. But in the year 2025, when I met her, the selling price actually reduced to 790,000. This is actually a 100,000 reduction because the area over there is getting older. So for owners who are not in the market, most of us will kind of feel very, very uncomfortable because they may feel that, hey, actually, we all agents are trying to reduce their price. But the numbers don't lie, you see, because if you take a look at the data, you'll start to understand there is a reason why, and because of the increasing supply. So owners or sellers, if you're thinking of considering to restructure, looking at this number will help to remind you that the likelihood of the numbers coming down is high. And if you're considering to restructure, now could be a good time. These are executive resale flats in matured towns. Also saw 2 straight years of slower price increase. And these are the 2 towns that most of us are extremely familiar with, one in Ang Mo Kio and another one in Clementi. In Ang Mo Kio itself, it's also 6.6%. And in Clementi, it's 7.1% in the year 2024. And then in 2025, unfortunately, Ang Mo Kio's executive flat saw a very big decrease until a negative 0.41%. So this is actually quite sad because it could be easily an Ang Mo Kio executive flat could be selling at maybe a 1 million in the year 2024. But right now, they could be only being able to sell it at maybe 780,000. So quite painful for the sellers over there, but if they don't have a choice because of BTO key collection, sometimes this is also a fact that we may want to embrace. For Clementi as well, executive flats that are older, they also saw that the take-up rate, or rather the demand, is not as high already. And there could be a shift that these buyers who used to want executive flats are either going for newer BTOs or newer flats over there, or maybe considering EC resale as their next option. And in non-matured towns, which is in Bukit Batok, in Hougang, and Jurong West, and Punggol, you can also see that in the year 2024 and 2025, Bukit Batok actually saw a slight dip in the percentage, and then in Hougang as well, in Jurong West as well, and in Punggol as well. So fortunately for the non-matured towns, because of the age, the likelihood of not too impacted by lease decay, the rate of dip did not actually go down by too much. But if we continue to hold on, it's definitely for you to reconsider your options. This is actually a private non-landed new sale per square feet versus STR average closing, which means our overall interest rates. So why do I want to show you this? Because whatever that I'm sharing with you earlier or actually are all the statistics that are happening for HDBs. And one of the great reasons, or rather the buyers on the ground that I'm observing, buyers who are looking for a 1 million to 1.2 million of HDB's budget, are usually toggling between buying a HDB at, let's say, Clementi, or buying a resale condo, or buying a younger condo at or slightly higher quantum at about 1.5 to 1.6 million. Now, why do they start exploring these options? Also because we understand that now borrowing costs are actually lowered by a lot. And because borrowing costs are lowered by a lot, it actually makes a lot of sense for a lot of buyers to start exploring going to the private sector, because If not now, then when? So we do not know when will the interest rate rebound, of course. But what we can be sure is that there is definitely a direct relationship with interest rates versus property prices. If you take a look at this since after the Lehman crisis, you can see that when interest rates were actually on a very stable or the interest rate that most buyers like, maybe let's put it this way, because this is low borrowing cost, there will definitely be an increase of demands by a lot of buyers who wants to buy a property at that time because borrowing cost is lesser, hence interest loss is lesser. So with a consolidation of buyers who all want to buy at the same time, inevitably you will still be able to see an overall increase in price in terms of the indexes. And if you realize when interest rate starts going up in the year 2019, there's actually a knee-jerk effect in terms of the property price because it did start to show a slight dip. But it was actually very short-lived because very quickly the market actually rebound and start going up by about 53.9%. With 53.9%, that means anyone who have bought during the high interest rates when most people are afraid to take action has already benefited from the next big jump once interest rate starts dipping. So today, we're actually in a market where interest rates are still coming down, which means that if we are actually thinking of buying as a upgrader, definitely this is a very good sign because we can actually try to afford a bigger house with lower interest. But if today we are buying it as an investor, maybe this is something that you want to consider because as an investor, we know that when everybody is trying to buy at the same time, the prices of property will definitely has to go up. So nonetheless, there are other reasons that can support property prices, such as economy growth factors and also stability and our GDP and stuff. So if you were to consider to upgrade at this point, do be mindful that the interest rate has been going down for since 1 year plus already. And because of the rate of going down, you also realize that property prices has been going up over here. Now, here's a very interesting sign that I'm observing. I'm observing that there's actually a very small dip over here, which we don't know whether in the first quarter of 2026, will we continually see the correction here, or will we just see that it's going to be a rebound? But what we can be sure is that the odds of property prices going up is actually going to be higher than the property prices coming down, because we are in a rate where interest rates are soft. By lowering the interest rate, this is also another chart to share with you that over here, you can actually see that these are the volume of transaction over here. And when rates were low, the volume are actually high. When rates were high, volume are actually kept low. Is to help you to take reference in terms of the demand at different time when interest rates are happening. So we are still seeing interest rates coming down. Oops. We are still seeing interest rates coming down. Give me a minute. We are still seeing interest rates coming down. And we are also starting to realize that the demand or the take-up rate is also picking up. So I wouldn't be surprised in the year 2026 for those of us who are thinking of going into a new launch. Maybe you realize the take-up rate for certain new launches might perform very, very well, and such as like in the year last year in Q4, those people who are buying Sky at Holland, those people who are buying Zion Grand and all this, they have seen like 80 to 90% sold over one launch. And I wouldn't be surprised right now if this same thing repeats, because I am actually seeing a lot of buyers right now holding on to their check and their interest, waiting for the launch that they are wanting to buy to put down their check. So the truth is there are still a lot of ready buyers out there thinking of investing because they know that this is actually a good time. So it could be not easy for you if you're thinking of going to a new launch. So I know it can be disappointing, but if it actually happens, do be mindful that this is also a market for it. So now we are still entering lower interest rates, and we're actually expecting that there's going to be another one more cut in the year 2026. So therefore, of course, we do not know whether, there's going to be one cut or two cut, but what we can be sure is there's going to be one cut at least for the first 6 months of 2026. So for HDB upgraders, this could still be a perfect timing for you because this is a time that based on statistics, is a good chance for you to cash out and sell high before you sell lower and lower. And for private, it could be a good chance for you to buy low because you are entering when interest rates are low. There might be some good buys in the market where the prices may not have gone up too much, or there might be still a very strong exit strategy ahead. So to swap your property at this point of time, I must say it's definitely a better choice than last year. If you are actually a private or EC owner, why is it that now could be the golden period for the first half of 2026? Because I wouldn't know whether 2020, second half of 2026, what kind of market we are in. It could be a booming market or it could be a softening market. Nobody knows. But at least for the first 6 months, we are going to see a stable market. So upgraders, if you are considering, do remember this thing. This is also something that we are adopting. We are going to think big. Think big means is about elevating yourself to the next step, which means that, what do I mean? A lot of homeowners, they'll be thinking, if I want to upgrade myself, what should I be upgrading into? Should I go into a 99 years to a freehold? Should I actually upgrade my current room size? Maybe if I'm thinking of upgrading for a 4 room to a 5 room, maybe an older 4 room upgrade to a younger 5 room. Perfect. Or maybe even like maybe older 4 room upgrade into a younger 4 room is also okay, depending on your financial affordability, since the overall market is still going to be stable. And also, one very, very hot topic right now that after researching a lot, I noticed that this could actually be a more stable market for people to upgrade from a non-harmonized project to a harmonized project. I will be personally running through all of this with you as we go along. Now, today, I'm not going to cover landed because it's going to be very, very long if I'm going to add landed inside. But if you are very, very curious to know landed and you want to explore the data, I have them ready. Feel free to drop me a DM or feel free to reach out to me if you have my number, and then we can run on landed on a separate session. So 99 versus freehold. What does it actually mean? If you take a look at the Singapore properties, this will tell you that there's a total overall of 80% of overall residential property being leasehold. And of course, we also know that freehold being freehold it only holds up to a 20%. The numbers is a round up figure. It's not exactly to the decimal. So this is to let us remember that alongside with our upgrading journey, we also want to be mindful that actually freehold property in Singapore is still very limited edition. And the reason why we are not going to a freehold is probably because of two reasons. One reason is because freehold's price gap is too big for us to jump into, or rather too big a price gap for us to elevate into, whereas leasehold still seems like a more palatable option for most of us. That could be one reason. Another reason is also because there's very few freehold project that is worthwhile considering in this market. And that is the reason why we decided maybe let's just go for leasehold first, and then let's go along and see whether there's some good freehold in the market, mostly for legacy purpose. So I want to tell you that if we take a look at these numbers alone and we plot it over here, you can notice that freehold or 999 years amounts up to 142,000 units. And out of these, 43% of them are non-landed, which means that actually condo that are freehold or 999 are really very little. And for 99 years leasehold, you have 185,000, and out of which non-landed is 56%. And of course, the older ones, is even less than 1%. Why is it important for you to know this? Because today, if I'm considering to upgrade from my 99 years property to a freehold, I want to be very mindful about price gap. Why price gap? Because I want to ask myself if I'm able to find that opportunity for me to upgrade into a freehold and not keep swapping my property. I want to know what kind of signs should I look out for before I go into it. So in this actually shows us the performance for 2010 all the way to 2025 between freehold versus leasehold. So for freehold being the blue line and leasehold being the red line, you can notice that in the year 2010, the price gap was 42%. Now, I want you to try to remember the years because later on I'm going to show you some case studies. With this, in 2014, you can notice that actually the price gap in 2014 is 32.8%. So maybe the numbers are a bit small for you to see. So this is 32.8% for 2014 between a freehold versus leasehold. And in 2010, it was quite a big gap at 42%, following by a narrowing gap of 32% in 2014. And then fast forward to 2019, there is a widening gap of 41%. And then right now in 2025, we haven't finished 2026 yet, there is actually a narrowing price gap of 17%. The numbers are actually quite interesting because we see that the trend is it widens and then it narrows, it widens and then it narrows. And how does it apply for the property performance? If you take a look at Gazania is a newly TOP in the year 2022. So people who bought it at that time is around the year 2019 range. So these are profit margin earned from freehold owners who bought during big gap, which means big gap means that in the year 2019 is a 41% of gap. For 41% of gap you see in the year 2019, which is over here, the three bedder at 850 square feet versus 883 square feet, which is quite close. You can see that in the year 2019, there's actually one of the seller who purchased in that year and sold it in 2025, same year as the one above, only made about 232,000 and the holding period was 6 years. And then for those who actually purchased in the year 2022, when the gap was actually narrowing, you can see that they only took 3 years to make the same amount of same or even more than what the 2019 seller actually bought. So this is actually one way that you may want to realize, because the timing of entry is actually quite important if you're considering a freehold property. And this is another example in Royal Green. If you notice the two bedders over there, those who bought in 2019, their actually gains is only about 23,000 and 162,000. This is also an amount that I would dread to uh, to announce to my sellers if I were the agent who transact during that time. Then moving forward to the two bedders during that time and the three bedder, those people who bought at the 2 years later when the gap was starting to narrow up, you can notice that their profit margin is at 108,000 to 285,000. And they only took about 3 to 4 years to make an equivalent or more than the owners who bought it in 2019. So this number is actually quite significant because we're actually comparing with similar size for two bedder versus two bedder and similar size for three bedder versus three bedder. And it's all really about the timing. And therefore, if you're considering to elevate from 99 to leasehold, I stress, and I cannot stress it anymore, is that the narrowing gap is very, very important, and you don't want to buy when the gap is big. So this is an example to share with you in Spottiswoode Suites. I have an owner who actually owns a property there, and they bought it during the time when the gap was actually very close. So Spottiswoode Suite is also a freehold project. It's in actually District 2, and I actually grew up over there. And if you take a look at this, 2014 and 2020, those who bought in 2014 actually gained about 164,000. But those who bought in 2020, which is very close to 2019, you see that the gain is only 50,000. And then for the three bedder, you can also notice those who bought in 2013, which is very close to 2014, that period, versus those who bought in 2017, one made 346,000 versus another made 105,000. So I do want us to take note of this because if I were to recommend any freehold properties to my owners, we also want to look at what I'm buying right now versus what is around me to see what kind of gap am I having with them to assess whether is it safe to buy or not. This is a case study that I have actually pulled out to help us to put it into practice to understand better what does it mean. Okay, so there's this, we all know Park Esta actually performed really well. Park Esta was completed in 2022. And we know that the owners who purchased one bedder has made 180,000 averaging and two bedder about 389,000. So for some context, Park Esta is just actually opposite Eunos MRT. And three bedders actually made 657,000 on average. And then the four bedder made about 890,000. At this point of time, this is a growth project for Park Esta. You can see that during the year 2022 to the year 2024 was the prime time where most of the owners make the most at 116 per square feet. But had they wait a little longer, then they will realize that the next year they made about $54 PSF, still not too bad. But the key is that, is there a chance for owners in Park Esta to actually elevate to Continuum? Here is one example. So the owner who actually sold off Park Esta actually purchased in the year 2019, and then they sold it in the year 2025 in March. And he made a profit of 780,000. With 780,000, of course, it's good. So then they move forward to Continuum. And Continuum, actually, they bought a three bedder. And the size is 947 square feet, actually quite similar. Then they realized that the entry price is 2.5 million, which means actually from 2.3 selling price to 2.5 is only plus about 200 plus thousand. So, but we're comparing between a leasehold versus a freehold, and that's the reason why when the gap is very close, you are able to elevate yourself from this to that. And what we want to do by what we actually want to achieve by doing this is to repeat the elevation and the gain cycle. What does it mean? I'll address that in a moment. So what happened with this owner is that actually when he sold off his part at 2.3 million, there was an outstanding loan of 900,000. With 900,000 of outstanding loan, if he put back his CPF of 120,000 and 180,000, he will have a gross sales proceed of 1.4 million. With 1.4 million, if I less off all the agent fee and all the nitty-gritty, he will be left with 1.049 million of cash. Then he moved forward to Continuum with a 2.542 purchase price, take up a loan of about 70%. Then he noticed that his total down payment, including stamp duty over here, will amount to 862,000. With 862,000, he still have a balance cash of 187,000, which he can choose to reduce his loan, or he can choose to keep them and throw them to somewhere else for investments because other areas have higher interest or rather higher or rather make better elsewhere. And the interest, since the borrowing cost is low, why not just extend the loan or probably increase the loan size so he can cash out these figures. Whatever you want to use with the money, all of us have different reasons. But what I want to demonstrate here is that actually it's quite easy, but you don't really find this opportunity to upgrade from where you are at for a leasehold to a freehold most of the time. But in this current market, there might be a chance for you if you are currently holding on to a leasehold. So another one is that consideration is that Park Colonial. Park Colonial also made about 23 per square feet over the next 1 year. But I must say that Park Colonial has already slowed down in terms of the demand and the growth. I have brought a lot of clients to see Park Colonial project. In the earlier years, in the year 2022 to 2023, during that period, or maybe early 2024, we do see 2023, the demand is still quite high. But then in the year 2024, 2025, we start to realize that the demand is starting to slow down. The reason is also because the owners has actually priced their property so high that most of the buyers are not able to accept. And after all, it's actually a leasehold. And the question is that those owners who are still holding on to their properties, is it really something that they want to consider about swapping their leasehold to a freehold nearby? Because over that area, there's quite a lot of freehold properties. And for selling residences also, we noticed that they have actually made quite a fair deal of gains. And if you are a sterling residence owner, you know that if you are the first owner, you have already enjoyed a lot of decent gains. Could this actually be a chance for you to elevate into freehold properties if the opportunity arises? So for Park Colonial itself, you can notice they are able to sell their 3-bedder at 2.6 million. And for sterling residences, they are also able to sell their unit at about 2.8 million. In fact, these are actual transaction prices. With this, would it be not more exciting if you have an opportunity, for example, Arena East, where there was a one price promo at 2006 PSF, which is similar with what they're selling at, because for sterling residences, it's 2006 per square feet, and for Park Colonial, it's also 2006 per square feet. So if you look at the PSF and you start to realize that actually I'm trading my same PSF to a freehold property, will I really have a chance to do it? If you think that this is something that excites you and you want to explore your options, I know some of you are thinking about it. You know that you can actually reach out to whoever invite you for this webinar, and definitely we'll be able to assist you in this journey to search for that quantum that is so close to allow you to elevate into a freehold. Of course, some of us may still want to enjoy the leasehold game. But at the end of the day, the leasehold property that you're buying has to make sense in terms of the price. If the price you're buying nearby the PSF is really similar, then the risk, of course, increase in terms of your purchase. So there must be a decent gap between your property that you're holding versus the upcoming freehold around you, if there are. It shouldn't be at the same price, because if it is at the same price in terms of PSF, then it's really time you want to consider to elevate, because it probably the risk actually starts to increase as you continually hold on to your leasehold property that has the same PSF as a nearby freehold. So Arena is one of the example. Earlier we were saying 3-bedder over there in Sterling and Park Colonial is at 2006 plus per square feet. And you can also see that in Arena East, which is a freehold in Katong area, 3-bedroom premium with private lift can still enjoy a 2006 plus per square feet because there was a one price promo. I see there are still a few units left over there, and if you're exploring, do feel free to reach out. And why is it important that you have to know this? Because Arena East, we know that it's in District 15. And District 15, we are well known that over there is a lot of freehold properties. But unfortunately, most of the freehold there are relatively old. So I have seen a project in King's Mansion is horribly old and is very, very big at 2,700 plus square feet. And it's impossible to offload because the quantum is at 4 million to 4.5 million. But because it's so old, nobody wants to buy it. And if anyone who wants to buy it, they're also very concerned whether there's going to be en bloc. So the owners who are holding on to these older properties are actually waiting for en bloc, which is already happening gradually. So this brings us to a very interesting topic that if you're considering District 15's freehold, which is necessary if you're buying District 15, you will then realize that actually in Mayor Park itself, the en bloc has already been done deal at 1,668 per square feet. That having said, that is the reason why you notice that in Mayor itself, the PSF transaction has actually gone up for 3-bedder to 3,001 to 3,004 per square feet. So this makes Arena actually very, very cheap. And in fact, maybe Arena, maybe other properties, we do have to dive deeper to look at each and every one. And now, definitely, I'm not able to explain all of them over this one webinar. But look at the numbers itself, it's already giving us a lot of safety benchmark because the gap is 3,001 to 3,004 PSF, transacting already in Mayor Blue. And then upcoming, there's a lot of en bloc opportunities here, which means that when it comes to en bloc, when they en bloc all of these, the current resale prices, if Mayor is actually going at around 3,001 to 3,004, you can notice that the next plot of en bloc is going to be at 1,840 per square feet, which is about 200 PSF higher than them. In that context, I wouldn't be surprised if it eventually amounts to 3,006 plus per square feet for freehold over there. So this is going to be the likelihood of the direction for the rest of the freehold over there, because as you go along, you realize, each of these remaining older freehold for en bloc in place only goes higher and higher in terms of their en bloc value. So as such, 3,000 and 3,006 PSF is going to be a norm for District 15's upcoming freehold, because over there, we don't have enough land for freehold already, and it's only going to go through en bloc. So if you're considering this area, actually, my high recommendation is to look for something at a lower range or maybe below 3 or 3,000 as a freehold property selection there. So this one is to share with you that in terms of the growth, for example, if you're considering the freehold over there, this one is let me see. Yeah, this is Mayor. So for Mayor itself, you can notice that what has happened is their initial entry price was 2,448, and until now it has already gone up to 3,000. Okay, so this is the overall price trend, and these owners who actually have sold, they have already seen a gain of about 400 plus to about 700,000. So moving forward, Amber House, which is recently launched, the take-up rate has already done deal as a new sale at 3,000, 3,001 or as low as 2,009, which means that if Amber House has already been done deal at this rate, do you now not realize that Arena at 2,006 plus PSF is actually very cheap? But again, there's only a few units left, so if you're considering, do let us know. Otherwise, the next batch of en bloc or next batch of freehold over there, you should expect a 3,001 onwards to 3,006 PSF. At this point, as I'm speaking, do you still think that resale actually still makes sense? Because we are talking about the launcher's price, and we're also talking about the possibility to upgrade from a leasehold to a freehold for the new launchers at a similar PSF. So if you are considering to buy a resale, which I know some of you are, do you think resale still makes sense because resale is already selling at 2,006 per square feet? So this is an example, to a very personal example to me, that I am also working on 1 or 2 active cases on this project. So Park Clementes is very close to where I used to live. And for Park Clementes, it wasn't this price to begin with, but now we are actually expecting they are already at the 2,005 to 2,007 per square feet. So why is it important for you to know this? Because a typical 1,033 square feet non-harmonized project in Park Clementes. It's already selling at 2007. It's calling at 2007 PSF with 2.8 million of asking. And then you also have a three-bedder with private lift at 1,249 square feet with 3.2 million asking. I find it personally hard to embrace this. And of course, we also have the high ceiling penthouse unit, calling at lower PSF because of the high ceiling, of course. And their square feet is 1,259 square feet, calling for almost 3 million as well. So with all this, as we are looking at this, the question is, does it still make sense for us to buy a resale? Some of us are actually buying for own stay, but in view that we are thinking of maybe we don't want to sell anymore. But these kind of prices that you are entering, how long do you think you need to hold on to it in order for it to cross 3,000 per square feet, or would it ever? So a very big question we must ask ourselves if we are considering to buy a resale. So will there actually be a chance for us to, instead of looking at all these resale, consider a nearby launch that still addresses the school's need? For example, not limited to this project, but for example, if I'm considering to upgrade my room type, if I'm looking at Park Clementes at 1,249 square feet, calling at averaging 2,562 PSF, let's say the asking is 3.2 million. What will happen is if I actually harmonize these 1,249 square feet, it will be a 1,161 square feet, three-bedder, and the PSF will be 2,583 if we negotiate this down to 3 million, right? And if I compare this versus Faber Residences four-bedder with 1,270 square feet, which is full living space because it's harmonized, at 2,002 PSF, ranging at about 2.8 million, one will start seeing that actually at 3 million here as a resale, I already have a 200,000 of savings to begin with. So this is actually my safety net, I actually have a safety net of 200,000 from the start. Or otherwise, I may not want to have the 200,000 saving. I might as well just top up for whatever that I'm paying here for 3 million into a five-bedder in Faber, which is 3.38 million. I top up 300,000. If the selling price is 300,000 above what I'm buying in Park Clementes, I should expect about a 90,000 extra down payment. So 90,000 extra down payment for a double upgrade from 3-bed premium plus private lift all the way to a five-bedder. I believe some of us might be quite excited to know that if I want space, this is it. Of course, other elements such as, Faber is a low-rise development, maybe I don't like it and stuff, that is secondary. But just looking at the floor space and the numbers itself, this is to remind ourselves, this may not actually be the best market for us to buy resale. So unless the resale you're buying maybe has very good star buy or maybe a very big price gap from the new launch that gives you very good safety net in terms of the quantum, then it's all right. If not, then I do believe that the risk for buying a resale has increased, and therefore you want to be very careful with your numbers if you are looking at a resale property at this point of time. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot buy resale, but my opinion is that you can still buy a resale, just be very mindful of the gap between your resale and the launches. Because nowadays we are seeing that the gap is very close or even the same. So there are still available units in Faber. You can actually see the four-bedder. There's still quite a long list here, from 2.7 million to 2.8 million for the higher level. And for five-bedder is at 3.2 million all the way to 3.3 million, which means to say we are still at a higher range of 2 to lower range of 3 for four and five-bedder in Faber as compared to Park Clementes. And of course, I know Park Clementes is very, very pretty, very, very nice. But when it comes to a sensible decision in terms of upgrade, we still need to take note of numbers and looking at the floor plan. Because in the future, we will be staying in it. In the future, we will need to sell off to people who need the space. So people will be looking at the fact that if I'm looking at the three-bedder premium plus private lift, I will have a very good lifestyle. I will have a private lift that open up to a foyer. I will have a wide frontage for living and dining. But truth be told, it's very, very difficult to put a dining area over here because the thing is actually quite narrow, which means most of the owners put their dining area over there because the actual space is actually 1,161 square feet if I unharmonize it. Unharmonized means that I take out all the unusable space, which is minus 7% livable area. So that means that if I take a look at this, my dining will have to go out. And I still have bedrooms, one slightly smaller bedroom, but I still have a decent bedroom and also a master room with a walk-in closet with store at the back and a back door because it's a private lift. Versus Faber, where I actually have a foyer to enter in from here. I still have some privacy over here. And then I actually have a wet and I also have a dry kitchen. I have a space for dining, which means I don't have to put it in the balcony. I have my living space. I now have a hackable room to decide if I want to take it out, which is quite rare because harmonized projects usually don't provide for this. So you have this. And if you take a look at the room space, right, there's actually providence for a cabinet here, but you're still able to fit a queen size bed here. And same thing for this. This is a direct mirror image, just that it's a bit more spacious here. You notice that it's a queen size bed with two side tables. In fact, another study table here if you want to push the bed to the side. So this makes the area looks very, very spacious and efficient. And that's really the benefit of a harmonized project. Same thing for the rooms, the bedroom at the back. You will also have all these rooms of equal space and a very comfortable master bath with a walk-in closet and a master bath as well. So livable space is absolutely great. The only thing, if I may be picky, is that maybe this is not a landscape layout. This is more of a portrait layout. But nonetheless, I will have a dining area. If I'm going to compare the same 3-bed premium plus private lift versus their 5-bedder, you then realize that actually the 5-bedder is definitely much more efficient because when you enter from here, you will have a junior master, you have your master, you have bedrooms in the middle, and then you also have a wet kitchen and also a yard area, a very spacious kitchen, I must say, and a place for dining, a place for living, and also a wide balcony. So in terms of bigger family, or rather some families who want to have big space, you can even choose to take out this wall and enjoy 4 bedrooms and have a very wide frontage for your living area. So there are flexibility to it, and it all comes with about 90,000 extra down payment, and you can enjoy a 5-bedder. Now, there could be some other projects that also enjoys this, and we do need to look at them one by one in order to compare. All right. So let's understand what actually it means by non-harmonized to harmonized project. Some of us are still guessing or wondering what it actually means. The non-harmonized to harmonized project actually was a rule that is implemented on the 1st of June in the year 2023. And Lentor Mansion is the very first harmonized project to be launched at that time. And quite frankly, during that time, I was also very skeptical about that development because, who really wants to buy a project that has about 786 square feet of 3-bedder and 800 plus square feet of 3-bedder? I'm very concerned. But I'm actually quite surprised to notice that there are people who take out, and the take-up rate was actually 80% sold on launch day. So this goes to show that nowadays a lot of people are very sensitive with the quantum that they're entering into. And since we are talking about quantum, that absolutely this is the whole direction of what harmonization is all about. Because we do know that with effect, the developer will no longer be able to sell the aircon ledge, the strata void spaces, high ceiling. They are not able to, they have a standard way of measuring wall to wall. And then no unnecessary wastage space that, all the floor area will belong to our actual livable space. So if you take a look at how it can impact you as an owner if you're holding on to a non-harmonized project, you want to realize that this is actually a summary to show you what does it mean. At the bottom is actually to show you the non-harmonized resale project, and on the top are the harmonized new launches. So we start with Florence Residence. If you see Florence Residence over here, Florence Residence's 3-bedder compact is about 893 to 980 square feet. And with the fact that their medium sale price is 1.8 million, Affinity at Serangoon is around 1.7 for their 3-bedroom compact. And then for Sterling is 2.1 million and Seaside is 2.6 million. And for the 3-bedroom premium in Florence is 2 million each for their 3-bedroom premium, as their sizes is at the 1,000 range. Remember, they are unharmonized. And Affinity at Serangoon is about 2.2 average, as well as Sterling at 2.6 and Seaside at 3 million range. Now, if you take a look at if those people are thinking of going out of this area or considering to buy a resale 3-bedder or new launch 3-bedder at that time, they will be really thinking about this because this is actually happening on the ground. Although the floor plate looks smaller in a harmonized project, they realize that it's still at a 915 actual living space. And the quantum that they're entering for a resale property, they're actually able to buy a 1.9 million for a 3-bedroom compact in Lentor Central, fully harmonized project, which means they only need to top up less than 100,000 in order to enjoy a brand new development. And also, Lentor Mansions is at 1.8 million, which is also very close to Florence and Affinity at Serangoon. And we're talking about brand new. And then the harmonized, usually new launches should be like about 100 to 200,000 higher than the previous launch, because that was what we have been pitching for the past few years ago. But now with this ruling, it actually changed the whole ball game, because buyers now have an option whether they want to buy an immediate one or they prefer to buy a more sensible one. And when it comes to being sensible, people were looking at the quantum and asking themselves, why do I want to pay more for an older project, whereas I could get almost the same price for a harmonized project? And this is actually quite vivid. Seaside Residence and Emerald Katong is actually at the same area. So with that, we know that Seaside's 3-bedroom compact is 1,000-ish square feet, and the entry price is 2.6 million at PSF ranging 2004. But in EOK, which is Emerald Katong, that sold really, really well, and a lot of agent purchase as well, a 3-bedroom compact is 883 square feet, but their quantum is so much lower than Seaside. Their quantum is 400,000 almost lower than Seaside, and it's 2.2 million. If there are young couples who are thinking of starting out a family or buying this as their second property or their first home altogether, then they will realize that actually this quantum is so much more palatable with a more efficient layout as compared to Seaside. So this is the reason why now you start to realize actually the harmonized projects are moving so well, mainly also because people are starting to realize the resale market are starting to move in a way that does not make or rather create a lot of fear or uncertainty in them entering in. So all the more, if you're holding on to a non-harmonized project, do give yourself a chance to explore a harmonized one and probably swap over. So how does it actually affect the market? This is a case study. And it's actually a case study that one of my clients feedback to me. In Sterling Residences, in resale TOP 2022, and in Penrith, which is a new launch, we know that people who are looking for a new launch in that area would have already seen resale prices, resale over there as well. So the buyer with the same budget, what would they be choosing? First, Sterling Residences, if they are looking for a 2-bed plus study at 786 square feet, they is already transacted at 1.98 million. But at the same price with extra bedroom, they can actually buy Penrith 3-bedroom compact at 1.978. One being 2-bed plus study, another one being 3-bedroom compact. So this is the efficiency of livable space, because they actually get to trade off all the 7% gross floor area into another bedroom for you. So that is also the reason why Sterling Residences showed a slower sign of a slower take-up rate in terms of the demand after Penrith was actually up. While once Penrith was bidded and is actually closed, now people start realizing that they are toggling between these two, because the leftover units in Penrith is not much for them to choose anyways. There are also buyers who are waiting for the next batch of launch, which will also touch on the price later. Okay, so case study. And number 2, okay, if you take a look at this, you can realize Awell Hill Residences. Now for Awell Hill Residences versus River Green, yeah. So pardon this map is actually having some error. I'm going to go straight to this because I believe some of us are actually quite familiar already. So this is a comparison between Revere, which is a non-harmonized project, versus a harmonized project in Zion Grand. Now, if you're familiar with River Valley, you will know that these projects are very close to each other, maybe one street across. In Revere itself, now we know that Revere is already TOP unit and it's a TOP in 2022. The 2-bedroom at 818 square feet was actually transacted at 2.5 million. And for Zion Grand alone, which is a brand new launch at that time, it's actually 3-bedroom, 818 square feet as well, 3-bedroom, transacting at 2.2 million. This is definitely going to be a very big blow to the Revere's homeowners, because they entered with the expectation hoping that their property can actually sell at maybe 2.8 to 3 million. But they probably then realized that, actually, I cannot sell at 2.8 to 3 million for a 2-bedder, because now Zion Grand is in the picture, coming in as a competitor, competing with them as a 3-bedroom instead, and transacting at 2.2 million. So buyers who are looking for the similar quantum, they will definitely compare these, and henceforth, it's actually putting Revere at a very disadvantaged situation. And this could also happen to any one of us who are holding on to an unharmonized project. Now, speaking of which, actually, I'm quite happy that I sold off Claremont. So lower transacted price, but actually extra bedroom. My husband is actually at the back, so he's watching as I'm speaking to him. Will resale buyers actually be able to feel a very big difference in size? Now, if this is okay, I know one of you here are actually staying, having a property in a well residences. So, no offense, but this is a very fair comparison to let you know. For Orwell Residences for a resale TOP in 2024, it's a beautiful project. I love it very much. During its launch, I love it because I like the developer, and of course, we know that the finishings are going to be great. And then when River Green launched, what happened is that Orwell Residences, two-bedroom premium at 667 square feet, has already transacted at 1.84 million to 2.23 million, which means to say they are transacting between this range as compared to River Green, which is a brand new TOP unit, brand new launch in the year 2029 to TOP, two-bedroom at 603 square feet, transacting already at 1.6 to 2.13 million. So the key question we want to know is that if there is going to be a two-bedder buyer in the markets, they will actually be seeing this because, okay, on Property Guru, I will see a 667 square feet. And then on Property Guru in future, I will be seeing a 603 square feet. But when they actually go and see, they will realize that what seemed on paper versus the actual visiting on the site could feel very different because the living space is only 19.1 for living square meter for living and dining in a well versus River Green, which is a much more efficient layout at 24 square meter. Yes. So bedroom wise, right, is 10 square meter and 9 square meter as compared to 11 square meter in a well, good. But their bedroom is only 8.4. If you have experience with viewing show flat, anything at 8 square meter already feels extreme. Maybe I'll put it small. But if you imagine just add a 0.4 square meter to it, it wouldn't be much of a difference because this time round, a well is an unharmonized project. So as such, I would expect the buyer to view both and realize, actually, although 603 square feet looks small, but the living space over here versus this, I really, really feel that this is much more efficient, much more significantly efficient than one in a well. Plus, essentially, I still get to enjoy an enclosable kitchen. So it's really, really space efficient and dollars efficient. So this is how the buyers will be seeing in the resale market in future. Also, in terms of the price, you can realize it's already done deal in a well at 2 million, even up to 2.2 million. Whereas in River Green, you can also realize the quantum itself is only 1.6, 1.7 million. So with a 1.6, 1.7 million versus 2 million range, one can see a difference of 300,000, but both of them are two better. So this is really something we want to be mindful in the near future if you are holding on to a non-harmonized project. So Lentor Modern versus Lentor Central. One is pre-harmonized, one is post-harmonized, one is unharmonized, one is harmonized. You can see for Lentor Modern, which is already TOP right now, there's a 732 square feet launched in September. And it's already done deal between 1.479 to 1.8 million versus Lentor Central at 797 square feet. What you would expect is that this is actually a flexi room. This is actually a study room. The space as a flexi room is 3.4 square meter versus a study room, which is 5 square meter. Why is that so? Because there's actually no more aircon ledge and wastage of space. That means that they can actually put all the space in the study room and allow you to enjoy a much more space in the living as compared to here, in the study as compared to here, and of course in the bedroom, one being 9, one being 8.7, one being 17 here, one being 11. So not too much of a difference. But we do want to know that if today I'm a buyer, I will definitely prioritize a newer project because of the bigger space, more efficient layout, as well as the quantum being very close to an older project. So could this be your chance to swap your non-harmonized to a harmonized project to allow us to be able to sell our non-harmonized project now at a high and enter a harmonized project at a low? So again, because of lower interest rate, we also understand that the replacement cost is actually lower because of the lower interest rate. Henceforth, if we were to swap a non-harmonized project to harmonized, you can also see that this is an example if you're holding on to a Lentor Modern at 990 square feet at entry of about 2.4 million, you can actually transact a Penreef at the same price at 2.4 million range as well. Now, there will be upcoming other projects that can help you to address this, but the concept is something that is very new to all of us for this year. And I do want you to start looking out for this kind of stuff and prioritizing harmonized project because there is really a chance to swap the same value to the same value without costing us much. And next one is Whistler Grand. We also know that Whistler Grand was completed in 2022. They have seen very, very good gains at 595,000 to even 645,000 on average. So Whistler Grand's projection in terms of growth has always been ongoing. In fact, for the past 2024 to 2025, they have seen even more growth in terms of their gains, even more increase in terms of their gains. So what you can see is that actually if Whistler Grand seller is selling, they are actually selling their 990 square feet unit and 1,066 square feet unit at 2 to 2.2 million. For 2 to 2.2 million, they can actually swap their development from a 3-bedder to a 4-bedder in Faber or a larger, for a 3.5 million, which is a 4-bedder in Park Clementes, to a Faber's 5-bedder, which I have mentioned earlier as well. How about the Tapestry? Tapestry is quite interesting because it was a project that I had a hard time selling at that time. So Tapestry itself has not seen a lot of growth for their smaller units. In fact, their 4 and 5-bedder are the ones that are really making because of the scarcity of supply over there. So with these gains made from Tapestry, they have also seen a gradual increase in terms of gains for these past 2 years. So let's say, for example, in Tapestry, you hold a unit in a 3-bedder over here at 1,346 square feet, and you realize you could sell it at 2.18 million. If you're considering maybe, we know that Tapestry is really not easy to sell, I really want to take my chance to offload this time and swap to another property to probably a harmonized one or maybe even a better location one. One of the options could be Parktown Residences. There will be some situation where I may not be able to get a value to value states. There might be a situation where I may be trading a location that is far more away from MRT, not as convenient as one that I'm trading into for a harmonized project. And if this happens, you can expect that you can actually swap your 2.18 million to a 2.6 to 2.8 million purchase in Parktown. Same thing, 3-bedder, actual 1,184 square feet living space, but this actually has strata area. What do I mean? I'll come to that in a while. So these are actually available units for Parktown for 3-bed premium plus study going at 2.6 million range. Now, what you want to be mindful about is that on the left itself is actually the Tapestry. So 1,346 square feet, actually, there's about 250 square feet of strata area above the living and dining. That means that the actual living space is 1,131 square feet. And if I unharmonize it, it will be 1,051 square feet at 2.18 million. And if I'm thinking, I think this is not efficient anymore, high ceiling doesn't make sense for me, maybe I want to swap. If I want to swap, you can realize that actually I sell it at 2.18, I can swap it to 2.6 million with 112 square feet actual of upgrade of living space into a 3-bed plus study at 1,163 square feet. And the difference is 420,000 of top up with 126,000 of down payment. The thing is, if you are thinking of doing this, you also want to look back at your own track record. Why do you want to do this? Because if you take a look at Tapestry, as mentioned earlier, it is definitely not an easy project to sell. In the earlier years, there's actually not much growth. If you're one of the owner who entered during that time, you may realize that actually there's only a very stagnant growth in Tapestry for the year in 2018 all the way to 2021. So from the time it actually TOP until now, it has gone through a few correction. For example, in the year 2021 until 2024, when market was supposed to be doing very well, they have seen a gain of only 23%. In 2024 to 2025, there is a further jump of another 8%. That means all in all, from 2021 to 2025, it has only made a gain of 33%. Now, this 33% may look very healthy to begin with, but if you actually take 33% to divide by your holding period, which is, let me write it down for you, 33% over your holding period of from 2018 all the way to 2025. 7 years. It will be actually, if you see whether 30 divided by 7 years. Over 7 years, you can actually realize 33 divided by 7, your annualization growth is only 4%. Now, this is something that if I'm thinking of as a seller, the question is, the reason why I want to buy a launch is because I want to be able to enjoy the growth. And 4% is merely just enough to break even for inflation. So because of that, lucky are those owners who manage to offload their property at the high ceiling ones at 2.18 million, having a gain of 600,000. Because moving forward, it may not be so easy already. So why do we want to swap is because since we have already made a gain of this period, why don't we just repeat the same growth model into the next project and restart the growth model from there all over again in a better location? So these are some of the projects that sometimes if you track back at your own project that you're holding, you may also realize that maybe my project may be performing, may not be performing. So I highly encourage you to actually request for a property report to look at past records or past transactions or past trends in your own property. Are you actually showing the same sign of stagnation in the early years or a certain part of your period, and then start to only see growth at the later years? Because if your property is actually that you're holding on is going through this kind of phase, then it's also time for us to look at is this really the chance that we could try to elevate this property to another more profitable one? Because most of the time when we're buying a new launch, you should expect the property growth to be steady. If not steady, overall trend should be still upwards. So if there is a chance that you go through this, then the property may have some situation that you may want to troubleshoot. So acres. Okay, so there are some owners who actually own ECs that's already MOP'd. And one of the example is Soul Acres, which is an unharmonized project. If you are one of the owners in Soul Acres and thinking whether I want to actually upgrade to a harmonized project, this could also be your chance, because if you take a look at your cash profits, I must say that it's actually very, very good, because you are seeing a 500,000 to 700,000 of profits over a period of probably 8 to 10 years. To be frank, is EC the best performing developments that I would personally prioritize? Of course, the answer is no. Because normally if you take a look at EC, you need to wait for about 4 years of construction, and you need to wait for about 5 years of MOP. By the time you sell it, it's between 8 to 10 years. Why? Because some of the project needs only 3 years of construction. So as such, this 8 to 10 years of holding period, trading off for 700,000 of gain, assuming if you are 700,000 of gain, you'll only be able to see, let's say you're holding for 8 years, you're only able to see a 87,000 of gain per year. And this 87,000 of gain per year is really not a number that we are very satisfied about. Reason being, you need to offset all your cost of holding, like your interest, your maintenance fee, and etc. So the net gain that you are seeing as an EC owner could easily amount to probably 60 to 65,000 year on year. So as such, these are the considerations that I really question myself whether should I continue to hold on to my EC, because if I want to, probably it's because of my family needs. But otherwise, if I have a chance to change this to repeat the auto elevation model, then definitely I will give myself a chance. So for Nara itself, this is one of a recommendation. A lot of people have concern whether Nara is going to have growth or not, but we'll address that later. And so Nara itself, Sky at Holland, Penreef, Lakeside, and Bedok Rise. This is a chart to show you in the upcoming years ahead or months ahead. What you would be expecting is Sky at Holland with a land sale of 1,285 PSF has already sold at an average of 3,001 PSF. And for Penreef, with a land sale of 1,154, is also averaging sold at around 2.29 with PSF at 2,008 per square feet. Now, if you take a look at Lakeside, which is 1,132, which is very similar with Penreef, but is in the OCR zone, you will also expect the selling price to be somewhere sitting around, probably very close to Penreef, at also around 2007 to 2008 PSF. So if this is the case, the question you want to ask yourself is, actually, OCR area I'm paying 2007 PSF starting from, is it sensible or not? Because why? I'm paying a lakeside area for a Penrith price moving forward. And this is going to be the confirmed launch for this year. So I have a question on the ground. So new property, what kind of growth should one be looking at? Generally, you should expect about minimally, like, for example, 30% of gain over a period of 5 years. I think this will be a 20 to 30% of gain over a period of 5 years, actually quite healthy. If I were to stretch it to probably 7 to 8 years, then the thing is sometimes some of us will realize the golden period to sell our property sometimes is during the TOP. Because why? During the TOP, we will try to refinance our property and stretch out and then probably reduce and continue staying. But we have done research to show that, which I won't be covering today, to show that why some of the owners, they actually make the most during TOP selling is actually because this is the time that the loan has not been dispersed. There's still a 15% of amount that has been retained, right? 15% that has been retained by the bank because it has not been released to developer. So we are not actually paying the full mortgage until it reaches 1 year after CSC. So why is it that people like to sell during the 3 years before the old rule is also because of that. But now if you're given a chance, try to sell during the 4th year mark so that you don't end up paying the full mortgage for a prolonged period of time. But if you have to, you can consider refinance it and reduce your monthly mortgage so that you can save on the money and reinvest somewhere to cover up for the interest here. But if you ask me for average, for example, if I were to gauge it 20 to 30% minimally for a period of 4 to 5 years maximum. So non-harmonized, back to Nara, you can see that for Hill Heaven, which is an unharmonized project, this is actually showing that two-bedder is already transacting at 1.8 to 1.7 to 1.8 million. So Hill Heaven being about 5 minutes or maybe 3 minutes, Hill Heaven is about 5 to 6 minutes walk to MRT. So because 5 to 6 minutes walk to MRT at that time and there is no harmonization ruling, you will expect, 1.6 to 1.7 is a norm for the units over there. But today, if I go further up, which is Nara to MRT is about 15 minutes away, what you are expecting is two-bedder in Hill Heaven is 1.8 million. Three-bedder in Nara can allow me to go in at 1.6 million. If I top up a bit more, I can actually go for a three-bedroom premium at 2 million plus. But the key and the most important thing is that even though this is 15 minutes to MRT, okay, the biggest trade-off I'm seeing is that my entry PSF is 1,009 per square feet. And for Hill Heaven is 2,003 to 2,004 PSF. So immediately for those buyers who are thinking about whether Nara is a good buy or not, the very first thing you want to ask yourself is that even though it's 15 minutes versus 6 minutes to MRT, probably is about 10 minutes difference, I'm actually having a safety net of about 500 PSF. 500 PSF just by the distance into MRT. So of course there will be two kinds of buyer. The buyers will be looking around for a similar quantum in Hill Heaven only to realize they could find a two-bedder over there. And if they go further up, will they actually eventually compromise the fact that for a 10 more minutes journey away, I could be able to get a 3-bedroom compact or 3-bedroom premium harmonized project at a much more affordable price? So there definitely will be buyers who will be looking at this because at the end of the day, now with this kind of quantum, there are buyers who wants to buy properties sensibly. Sometimes not all buyers are looking at distance to MRT. Buyers are looking at the quantum that they are entering into, whether it makes sense or not for me to buy a certain location that is further from MRT, but I'm saving on so much in terms of PSF, and I'm getting back an actual space that is so much more comfortable to live in. For two-bedroom so if I'm going to compare Nara with the nearby project, what you can actually see is the immediate project that I've sold quite a fair bit is Botany. Botany is a non-harmonized project, and of course, during that time when we were selling, we were definitely not aware of the ruling of the harmonization. So this time around, we could use it as a comparison. For Botany, for two-bedder, new launch 3 years ago, what they have already done deal was 1.466 million. For 1.466 million, 678 square feet, if I less off the sellable area, is 630 square feet. And this is actually the quantum for their two-bedder at 1.466. But conversely for Nara, at 646 square feet, which is larger over here, their starting price is 1.284 million. This means that it's actually 180,000 cheaper than the new launch 3 years ago. And with this, it actually questions ourselves whether, in that case, then wouldn't it make much more sense for me to prioritize a harmonized project and hang, maybe that time I haven't buy it. So if you have missed project and you didn't get to buy a project, I think on a side note, maybe you are lucky. So for three bedder new launches in Botany again, its highest transacted was 2.3 million. With 2.3 million, if I less off the 7% sellable area, it's 1,000 square feet. For Nara alone at 1,023 square feet, there are three bedders start from 2 million, which is actually more than 300,000 cheaper than what has been done till 3 years ago. So never ever before in history for these past 5 years will you be able to see a new launch that is selling cheaper than the previous launches. And this is actually the time that you actually get to see this. And that's why, as I share with you, I am getting very, very excited because we really don't have this kind of opportunity all the time, because moving forward, there will be a correction in terms of the next future GLS will be one GLS after another. And this time around, the land sale will continually go up, which you have to stay till the end to understand why. So continue in Nara is that if you take a look, this area, dairy farm area, there is actually an effect of the early mover opportunity. Why? Because over there's a total of 7 plots. 7 plots, I mean the empty plots. Out of the 7 plots, there are 2 plots that are already launched and they are unharmonized, and there are 5 plots that are harmonized. The unharmonized 2 plots are, of course, the dairy farm residences and the botany which I just mentioned. And for the rest of the 5 plots, it's going to be harmonized, which means that each of them is going to be starting again. Each launch going to be higher. So this is actually the window which I'm trying to share with you, that you are able to see the difference between, or rather you are able to enjoy the savings between an unharmonized to a harmonized to cash in on the potential savings. And that's why even if you take a look at the macro of dairy farm, there's a total of 13 development, and out of it, 8 of them are unharmonized. That includes Eco Century, Treehouse, Forest Key, and Dairy Farm and Skywoods and them. That means only 5 of these development over there are harmonized. This also means that there's only 5 opportunities for us to enter in the dairy farm estates, and that's about it. So if you are considering, or even still considering if Nara is the one for you, I'll leave the decision to you by looking at the statistics and looking at the opportunities. Of course, I do know that there are some room for much more growth moving forward as an early mover. So here comes the next question is, where are the other areas with such mixed unharmonized and harmonized development that you get to see this gap? Of course, I cannot cover all of them. And if I were to bring out one example, upcoming there's going to be this thing called this project called the Lentor Garden Residences. So Lentor Garden Residences, we know that it's situated in Lentor Hill Estates. There was in that area, there's total of 6 projects launched in Lentor Hill Estates, amounting to 2,954 units. And out of it, right, 2,918 units are already sold after 3.5 years of launch, which is actually very, very fast. Because if you were to ask me initially, when I know there were so many plots, the first thing that came to my mind was oversupply. And truth be told, you could be thinking about the same about Nara as well. So with this, the take-up rate is also to remind us that in Singapore, we are really going through a very low supply in terms of our properties. And the way our governments are releasing the lands could be in a very steadily manner, which is the reason why you notice the take-up rate is very fast, 2,918 units. So also some of the attributes are they are surrounded by $1 million HDBs. The HDBs are thinking of upgrading, but they do not want to go into panorama because they feel that area is very, very saturated. It's very high already. And also Amo residences, they could have not been given a chance to enter during that time. So therefore, one may realize that they may now spill over to Lentor area to see where are the opportunities, and that's why the upgraders are plentiful. So with this, we know that Lentor Garden is one of the harmonized project over there. And if you were to know, Lentor mentioned it was the first harmonized project. And then moving forward, we have this as a second. And the rest are actually unharmonized, which is very important that you want to know. Lentor mentioned is the first, Lentor Central second, and Lentor Garden is the third. Then the rest are actually unharmonized, which means there's only 3 harmonized projects in the whole of Lentor area. There is actually a very good mix. And there could be some opportunities for you if you want to enjoy buying below the non-harmonized pricing. I know there's a lot of speculations about 2026 new launch pipeline in the first half of 2026, which means that from January to June, you're going to expect these launches and maybe even more here and there. So potentially there's going to be 19% or rather 1,587 units in the RCR zone, 1,363 units in the CCR, and OCR having the most at 5,500 units. So how to pick? Because there's a total of 6,700 units in the first half of 2026. With this being said, I have actually handpicked developments according to budget range. Some of us have a budget range of 2 million. Some of us have budget range of 2.5, 3 million, or even 3.5. I know that you may have information overload. I know that you may have a lot of mixed information from everyone. But if you were to explore where are the consolidated options most suitable for your needs, scan on the QR code and then leave an inquiry there. And my staff will reach out to you and then send you the list of options according to your current needs. So I'm going to give you maybe 10 seconds to scan this if that is something that you're excited to know and that could benefit you. Today is what day? Oh. Okay. All right. So let's continue. With a seemingly slowing market, or rather seemingly not so fast moving market because the indexes are coming down, it brings us to the next question is, will we see a property crash or correction soon? This part is actually very interesting. Why? Because I also want to know. If you know me, we are also actively waiting for opportunities to enter the market as our second property. I will touch on that later. So now with this, okay, for what are the key factors that are driving Singapore real estate markets? What we want to know is that, of course, overall economy positioning as well as government measures. So overall economy positioning in terms of GDP growth, employment, and of course, business confidence and stability, interest rates and stuff. Government measures are also things like our regulations, our cooling measures and stuff like that. So today we're going to address the overall economy positioning in Singapore. That is a forecast. From here, we know that our Singapore GDP was going to expand has already expanded by a stunning 4.8% in 2025. Of course, it's aided by AI and all this kind of tech stuff. But we do not know whether 2026 is going to continue boom because there is actually speculation that it may not be this way for 2026. There could be a slowing down effect. It will no longer 4.8%, which means that in this year, 2026, there is a forecast that the growth should be sitting around 1 to 3%. So at least we are not going to negative, but we are going to be in a very stable zone of 1 to 3%, which means that you may not see crazy spending. You may not see a lot of people going broke, but they will be normalized. So we should expect 2% averaging on our GDP growth for 2026, at least for the first half. Okay? And then also, another news over here is saying that we may not be able to keep up with the growth in 2025 again. But what is interesting is that if there's US tariffs, we may be able to withstand it in 2026. So I have a lot of faith in our Singapore economy, and I believe whatever that our government is doing is always pre-regulated. That means if they foresee something is coming, they will actually start to give us some signs by some new measures. If you notice that our government is going to start introducing new measures, it is also a sign for us to take note that something might be coming up. So this is our overall economy growth versus property markets. What you can notice is that in the year 2025, as mentioned, is a 4.8% growth, and property year on year is at 3.4% in 2025. So if we were to actually reduce the GDP growth to 2%, do you think in this more stable market, will it give you a bit more confidence that if I want to buy, I know that there's not going to be a very drastic change, whether there's going to be a very big uptrend or a very big downtrend? It's probably a more stable situation. Now, to each his own. Some of us might be thinking, some of us with very high risk, excitement, risk takers and whatever, we want excitement. Maybe you think that, oh, maybe it's not exciting enough for me to take action. But some of us who want stability, who wants to know that I'm not doing a very impulsive decision at this point of time. I want to do when the market is stable, not when everyone is flocking to buy and etc. Maybe this could be a sign for you, because when the GDP is kept stable, people are more alert with the way they spend their money. So, but one thing that will not change, that I personally find that is very, very important to know, is the land betterment charge. Now, land betterment charge is because it actually reflects our government's overall redevelopment direction. And of course, as we start to redevelop plentiful areas that is announced in our URA master plan, the value of our land also naturally has to increase. So therefore, this land betterment charge is like a tax that increase over time, because as our country becomes better and better and more advanced, the redevelopment does help to push up. Our government will charge higher in terms of the value. So henceforth, in terms of the land betterment charge for commercial, residential, and industrial, you can see it actually go up by 0.1% to 1.6% on average. So this is one thing that we want to take note, is because on one hand, we are waiting for the prices to come down. Truth. But on the other hand, we also want to know whether the property that we are holding on, if we are going to hold on, or the property that we are intending to buy, will we actually see the dip? Because I'm very concerned if that's the case. So with this in place, it gives me a lot of confidence, because of course we know developer is not going to make so much money after land betterment charge. Before land betterment charge, they are able to make this amount, and after land betterment charge, they actually have a reduction, which means that when the land betterment charge goes up, of course the selling price, which means the developer selling price to us, does not mean that, oh, they bid the land higher, immediately they will charge us higher, because there are actually other elements to it, such as construction costs and legalities and approvals and everything else. So the developer's cost does increase alongside with all this. And that's why they try to see what they can do to adjust their margin, to not overcharge us, but yet still be able to sell their development. And remember, the developers still have a 3 years of benchmark. That means if they don't sell enough unit over 3 years, they will still be taxed on that. So this is the part that developers try to strike a balance about it, understanding that they may not be able to make so much profit. So that's why developers try to be very careful when they price a property, when there's a lot of competitors in the market. That is also the reason you see why Zion Grand, why Promenade Peak, why River Green, and all these are priced so sensitively, because they know that each of them are fighting with each other for buyers. So land betterment charge, interestingly, are increasing more in certain areas. So why you want to know this? Because if you are considering to swap your property, you want to know where are the areas that our government is increasing land betterment charge, because of course with increasing land betterment charge means the residential properties there, overall prices will also move upwards faster. So land betterment charge rises area includes Bayshore, East Coast, Marina East, Lorong Chuan are the few in the spotlight. So the biggest increase in land betterment charge for residential includes this sector. They are broken down into sectors, not in districts. I will break down more with you later. So you have sector 96, 89, 90, 104, 93. So these areas include Siglap and Bayshore, East Coast, Marina, Ang Mo Kio, as well as Joo Chiat and all this. With this, they actually increased by a lot, because in Siglap and Bayshore, they are increasing another 15% over there. And for East Coast Park area, it's 12%. For Marina East area, East Coast Park area, that whole stretch all the way to Greater Southern Waterfront, that side, is 12%, as well as Ang Mo Kio area has also gone up by 9.5%. Joo Chiat, interestingly, because the Lokura's property has been stagnant for the longest time. And then also part of Changi Road and part of East Coast Road, I have the map, I'll come to that in a while, has also increased by 5.4. So looking at this data, it actually reminds us where is the government's direction to increase and transform, or spend more funds to transform there, and hereby bringing in more residential properties there. So I actually pull out all the maps to give you a better perspective where they are, because you could be looking for a property, and this might be vital for you to make sense of where is the increasing land betterment charge that pushes up the property prices eventually. So what you see is Sigrat and Bayshore area. You have Sigrat MRT here and Bayshore, and this stretches for the whole stretch over here. So properties over here, all these empty ones and some of the residential there may also experience the increment. And then over here as well, Sector 89, the East Coast Park area, we love to jog over there, bring our kids there and etc. to cycle and all this. These are also part of the Long Island development, which you should be familiar by now. And these are the stretch that also increases in terms of the land betterment charge. Sector 90, Marina East, which is the Greater Southern Waterfront area, also will be seeing an increasing of land betterment charge, which is 12% as mentioned earlier. And then over here, which is Ang Mo Kio, Longshan, Bishan area and Bartley area. So that brings us to the next topic. Should we buy Thomson View? So, because if I look at this, I will be quite excited because Ang Mo Kio area does not have a lot of supply. We know that. But if they are going to increase the LBC here, it means that our government is actually having plans. So they will not just increase this area for no reason. And I brought a client to view Chuan Park last 2 weeks ago, right? You are inside here. So last 2 weeks ago, we were looking at Chuan Park. We were also thinking, actually this area still have a lot of room for growth because the other two plots are trying to merge. So with this, we are going to expect that the area is not going to be launched cheap because they are also having a higher land betterment charge there. So that's why I'm seeing Chuan Grove move very, very fast right now because they want to enjoy this privilege. And to take relationship to land betterment charge. Now, this land price sold will determine the future selling price. You need to remember because of course development will not immediately mark up the price, but it will still have a ripple effect to our property price. So that's why if you realize CDL when they bid for Zion area, the average selling price is 3,000 PSF. And Zion, we know that it actually sold out really, really well. Next is also this House and Sky Holland, yeah. So what you're expecting is that their PSF is around 3,002 to 3,005 PSF. You're also expecting Bayshore, which at first when I was looking at it, I was also telling myself that this is impossible. I don't even think that you will sell. But there are actually 8 bidders for this development, which means that when it was launched or tendered out, we have 8 bidders with CDL winning the development, which means that if you were to be looking at Bayshore as an early mover, your starting price over there will be 2,007 per square feet. So we know that this is going to be up and coming, but we also know that future land prices is also going to go up. If you are waiting for the market to soften, unfortunately, depending on if you're holding on to the property, the overall prices will continue going up. And there are other parts, whether, how old is your property, whether there will still be growth or not, whether you want to consider doing a property health check on your property or not, looking at the micro and macro factors, which is important before you jump into selling. And essentially, Chuan Grove, which is Chuan Park, has already started at about 2006, 2005 PSF during their launch. Well, during their launch, when they launched at 2005 PSF, they already sold about 696 units. But right now, their number of units sold is even more. It's already 89% as we speak, because this is actually very fresh data that I just took out this afternoon. For Parktown, already sold at 93%. Not much inventory is left. Grand Diamond, 89% sold. Continuum, 83% if you're thinking of that. Ori, 94%, and also Hewlett Green, even at 98.1%. Which means to say, based on the latest data we are having in quarter 3, 2025, because the quarter 4 is not out yet, our unsold supply has already moderated to 17,000. 1 quarter before was 21,000. After that, quarter 3 was 17,000. That means if there is no increasing of developments or land sales or new launches, which is like the first half of 2026, the property prices is going to go up like crazy. So there must be introduction of supply in order to moderate the demand. Otherwise, the prices will go up so much. And imagine if our government don't release, the take-up rate for CCR will take 6 years, only 6 years to deplete. And RCR only takes 1.5 years. And OCR takes 1 year only to deplete. And this is in Q3 only last year. Imagine right now we're sitting at Q4 over already. The numbers here will have even been lesser. So actually, friends, we are actually facing a very low supply situation right now for our private sector. That's why you realize if you are looking around for a property, there don't seem to be a lot to view. So with this, you also see that upcoming prices for our OCR land bids, okay? What you will see is that in the EC sector, for upcoming launches, you will be noticing that their prices are actually increasing. Even Woodlands is going at 782 PSF per plot ratio for their land bid, which you should expect Woodlands to be around 1007 PSF, something around there. You can add about 1,000 to it. And then OCR, maybe 1,000 to 1,002 because construction cost is increasing. So for OCR future land costs, you can see that Lentor Gardens is 920, so Lentor should be launching at 2,000 PSF and above. And also you will see that Bayshore is 1,388, minimally about 2,000, maybe 2,006 starting from for a few choice units and eventually 2,007, right? And notice that the charts only keep going up because this is already, the lands are already bidded, the numbers are already there. This is really something that we cannot avoid. Next, you also have Media Circle all the way to Bukit Timah Road. You can see that the prices are also gradually going up from RCR area all the way to CCR area. So RCR area is 1,004 in Holland Link, which is the one near MGS. And also you have Dorset Road, Telok Blangah Road. I'll touch on that in a moment. With this, the new launch supply of private homes in the upcoming in OCR and EC segments, what you will realize is in 2026, there's going to be a reduction in terms of supply as compared to last year. And in RCR, also a reduction of supply compared to last year. And also OCR, increase of supply as compared to last year by 1,005. And then for EC, increase 2003. So this year, there will be OCR and EC launches, quite a fair bit. Last year, it's true that we don't have a lot of them. So overall, EC, you should be sitting at about 9,007. Overall, excluding EC is 9,007, which is all these three. And with EC is 12,000 for the first half of 2026. So first mover advantage, something that we always want to know is that due to the land cost, which I've been stressing on repetitively, what we must be able to internalize is that what we see is the current land cost in the OCR could be already selling at the future land cost of RCR and CCR. So what do I mean? For example, if you take a look at Zion Grand and Promenade Peak, their land is 1,002 and 1,003 PSF per plot ratio. And they are already selling at 3,000 to 3,003 PSF. But if you go into Penrith, you realize that their land cost is actually lower and they're selling at 2,008 PSF. So with this, it helps you to track the process or rather the growth of the direction of 2026 launches. For Lakeside, 1,132 PSF per plot ratio. What you will be seeing is definitely crossing 2,006 PSF, at least starting from, and we're talking about Lakeside. And then this is also an OCR plot. And then we have also Dorset Road at 1,388 PSF per plot ratio, going in at around, you should expect around 3,000 PSF, because if you notice, this one going at 1,003 is already averaging 3,003. So if this is 1,338, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3,000 to 3,005 or so. So 3,000 to 3,002 PSF. So this will be Dorset area, followed by Telok Blangah, which is an OCR area. Very, very importantly, take note, Telok Blangah area is 1,326 PSF per plot ratio. That plot over there is an OCR plot. OCR plot is going to be similar price with Dorset Road, which will be also launching at around 3,000 to 3,002 in the first quarter of 2027. So this is very, very clear because over here, you know, in quarter 3, 2026, OCR is going to be launching at 2,006, which is the current RCR prices. And in next year onwards, you're going to expect our RCR price to be selling at the current CCR prices and the OCR prices to be selling at the current RCR prices. So therefore, be very mindful because the likelihood of the prices, or rather land prices coming down, is very low because all this is already cast in stone. And fortunately, unfortunately, we still have to embrace the market. Either we enter as an early mover, or if we wait to buy at a later stage, this is going to be the outcome. That's why, to be frank, as agent, sometimes we struggle a lot. The reason is also because we also don't know whether we want to wait to buy or not, or we want to buy to wait. Because if we wait to buy, maybe we'll end up having to fork out more. But if we buy to wait, we're also concerned whether will there be better new buys ahead of the market as well. But whatever it is, the early mover advantage, if the statistics and the numbers do support, I do encourage us to give it a serious thought because we also abide by the same rule. For example, Chuan Grove. If those of us who have viewed Chuan Park, you know that the benefit is that in Chuan Park, you are able to still get something at the 2006 PSF. But if we not go ahead for Chuan Park, what we'll be expecting in quarter 4 2026 to first quarter of 2027, this will be the new norm for Chuan Park, which is 3,000 PSF starting from. So if I know that this is going to be the next slot and 3,000 PSF starting from, with the Chuan Park being the best location as compared to that side, then of course it's a very clear benchmark for me to know, can I choose to have early mover advantage? And that is also the same thing we always check for before we recommend our clients to buy anything. So in quarter 4 2026, Bedok Rise also is going to cross 3,000 PSF already. So very, very scary when I look at this number, but it's also a fact that I encourage you to really look at it. This is also to tell you the overall price trend, that this is going to be the markets. If you want this, you can ask from me. So I'm almost finishing already. Stay on with me. And this is the RCR and CCR price gap that we also noticed that there are some of the buyers who are waiting to buy something very near to town, but they did not want to buy near to town because they are very concerned if, what if I'm buying at a high? What you now know is that RCR is going to be the CCR, the future RCR prices is going to be selling at the current CCR prices. So if you know this, you can also take reference that in 2025, right now the gap is actually very narrow. It's at 11.5%. So earlier I talked about the importance of knowing price gap before you enter for freehold versus leasehold. Same thing for CCR and RCR. There could be some good buys in CCR area that has a very narrow price gap that you can leverage on. And of course, all of this cannot be covered in today's session. If you want it one-on-one, we can do it for you. And it's also to share with you that since we mentioned about narrowing price gap between CCR and other region, what you can see is that in the year 2025, what the RCR and CCR region over here is, in the CCR, you can actually see a 2.2 to almost 2.3 million of entry price for a 700 to 1,000 square feet range property. And then for CCR also, actually the price is very, very close. I have to agree because we've seen quite a few CCR projects and we are quite impressed by the very close, narrow gap. So the thing is that if you are really bent on buying something that is prime and you don't intend to sell for a longer period of time, this is also a good time for you to probably own a piece of CCR if you want something convenient and you always dream of owning a CCR project. But do remember, CCR project also has its risk, in my opinion. So there should be more additional layer of research to be done for CCR projects, such as the supply, the demand versus the layout, and your future transformation. Because areas like Tanjong Pagar or Shenton Way and all these are some of the danger zones that honestly I may be very concerned about. Because we try to sell properties around there, especially the foreigners are not able to come in anymore. We do see that the rate of take-up has declined tremendously. Therefore, when some of my owners want to rent out, they also find that it's harder to rent out because again, there's not much foreigners here already. And in terms of rental, there's a lot of other options elsewhere with bigger space. So if you're considering a CCR project because you just like it, of course, allow me to go through the detailed check with you. But if you're buying CCR as an investment, the risk level increases. And therefore, if it's really something you dream of doing, then do be very careful to look at the supply versus demand, the future development, and also the volume of sales over year on year at that area. Because this will tell you whether it's safe to buy over there if you want to exit or not. So this is to share with you that CCR prices could be selling at RCR price, and it's actually happening already. Earlier I mentioned about Teluk Blangah, land price at 1,003 PSF per plot ratio, as compared to Sky Holland at 1,002, which means people who buy Sky Holland actually will be making money already. because of these future prices, it has already pushed up theirs. Well, it takes a bit of time, but then again, because of this, nowadays a lot of people are looking at CCR mainly because of the future projection of prices. So these are the latest RCR land bids. Telok land cost at 1326, and upcoming, which is next year, Dover is going to be launching at a higher price. So people who are still waiting, they could be buying a Telok at 3,000 for 3,000 at this Telok area. But Dover itself is also RCR going to be launched later. I won't be surprised if this is going to be 3,002 to 3,004. So again, it goes back to early mover. All right. So where the market is headed in 2026 will be the OCR land cost now is now the RCR land price. And RCR land cost now is actually now the CCR land price. And moving forward, CCR actually in the year 2026 will be setting the new benchmark price. So it has to be this actually paving the way for all of this. And therefore, if there are actually projects selling this at this price, of course, the it's quite enticing, I must say. But again, must do some enough research lah, huh? So where to get this first mover advantage in this challenging market? I know some of us are in this either one of them. Either you are investment, swapping to the second property, or you are in a legacy state, thinking of holding it for long term. I know there are some properties with leasehold with growth potential, and there's also flexibility to exit, as well as we are able to help you to chart when is the entry, when is the exit points, and where are the areas with high demand and low supply. Then for legacy, we also know certain areas that are selling at freehold, selling at leasehold price. Again, if you're looking at 3 exit points, which is actually good for different type of development, as well as if you're thinking of doing this as a legacy, what to expect by holding on to this kind of property. And the key thing is that how do you find undervalued project with upside? If this is something that you are considering, again, I encourage you to go into this QR code, leave me an inquiry, allow me to walk you through with what kind of undervalued property project selections. While you are scanning this, let me drink water. Okay. For those of you who are watching the replay, you can actually pause and scan it. So this is about me, how I built from my 485,000 net worth to 8 million asset in 8 years. So my target combined net worth is 10 million by 2030. I mean, some of y'all should have already known. And I started off with an EM. Why do you see that it's a zero? It's because I gave the house to my ex-husband. I decided to move forward without fighting over assets. So he took that house. And then I restarted my life with my son. And then I bought this 5-room HDB with my son at that time. During that time, I was not very into property investments. In fact, I was thinking of fully paying this HDB and buying the next property after. I think that was the era for that. But I realized the property prices grow so fast that it doesn't make sense to hold on to the HDB. So I wrote in to appeal for 3 years selling and successfully got the approval. And that's why when I bought it at 468,000, I sold it at 608,000. And I moved on to, of course, before I decided to buy Clavon, I was toggling between resale EC or toggling between smaller new launch and etc. Then I realized that actually, if I want to buy I want to shortcut my asset progression, why don't I just go for a Clavon 5 beta? There's a lot of story to why I got to Clavon 5 beta. I will share with you offline if I manage to speak to you. And eventually, I bought it at 2.86 million. Yeah, this is my house. I spent 30,000 to renovate. For some of you who have came to my landed seminar, Colin was my ID and he did this for me at a very, very good price. So he's a good ID lah. And I sold it at 3.71 million. So with this, just now Jennifer was asking me, hey Kelly, what kind of growth is actually good? So what I want to share with you is that if you take a look at this, right, you can notice that I sold it at 3.71, and if I minus off my 2.86, it's actually at 850,000 of gain. With 850,000 of gain, I bought Clavon over here 3 years, and I sold Clavon I only stayed Clavon for 8 months, which means within a span of 4 years, I made 850,000 divided by 4 years, and per year I'm making 212,000. So I know that this number might not be easily achievable for some of the projects, but I also seen a few of my clients actually experiencing very close to this number as well. So anything in the 100 plus range per year is really, or maybe anything less than 100,000 a year for a typical two-bedder, or maybe even three-bedder, 100 plus thousand, anything lesser than that to me is less. So that's why with this, I decided that, okay, it's really a shortcut. I went into my next plan, which is to go into a 4 million Nava Groove, where I put in a down payment of 1.2 million. And next, my husband and I are considering between a landed or new launch between 3.5 to 4 mil. And then we will be setting aside 1 mil for the next down payment. Now I'm sharing this with you is not because I want you to know, how much I have and whatever, but I want you to understand that actually if you do it in a safe and systematic manner, risks can actually be mitigated, and there's still a possibility that you're able to walk through this step by step. For example, personally in my 15 years of property journey, I have helped more than 1,000 clients. In fact, 1,000 plus coming to 1,001 already. So with all these 1,000 over clients, I've gotten a lot of good reviews from them. In last year alone, I've transacted more than 62 million worth of property value transaction. So why is it important for you to know this? Because if you're going to make such an important decision for your own property journey, you want to make sure that you hand over this guidance to to agents who are able to handle this amount of quantum with you. Because a lot of agents, you want to find someone who preach what they do. Then that will give you a lot of certainty that they know what they are doing and they are skin in the game. And they're not just making money out of you because that is all they do. We want to be very, very transparent and open with what we do. And that's why getting reviews and having customer satisfaction is what I abide for. So by being able to do this, we also gotten a lot of, helped a lot of clients. One of the vivid one is this client who has interviewed at least 10 agents before he met me. And he set up for me, of course. And what we did was we sold off his HDB MOP unit at a record price within 2 viewings. And then we elevated his assets to prominent peak around 2 million, bought Park Esta at 1.7 million, and his total net worth became 3.7 million over in the year 2025. And we actually did a retirement goal setting, and they wanted a very clear goal of 6 million by 2035. With this, it actually allows me to plan next step for them. At 3.7 million net worth, they are able to move on to their next step and plan to sell PP at 2.5 million and sell their Park Esta and enter at 2.5 million to bring their total net worth to 5 million by the year 2030 to year 2031. So earlier I also mentioned to you why is it important to track your entry and exit timing, because most of us actually have limited time in terms of our loanability. So not all of us actually start from 25 years old. And if we don't start from 25 years old, we want to retire early, of course, we need to learn to shortcut a bit and be very strategic in what we are planning. Therefore, helping you all to shortcut is my passion. And by helping him to grow from where he was at 860,000 to 3.7 million, within just, I know him for about 9 months, he was very, very happy. And the next plan was to go into this. And then in the year 2030 to year 2031, we will then go into a 6 million by year 2035. Well, by then he can have the option whether he want to keep or swap to a larger unit as their goals are already met. So why is it important to do this in a very step-by-step manner? Because you know what you are doing and you know that you are able to calculate your monthly mortgage versus your affordability versus what is the best amount I can buy, so you don't over leverage. And in case the market is not sensible, you have already some cushioning for it, so you don't have to end up selling your house in a fire sale. And that is the last thing I ever want for any one of my clients. This is also one of the example. This client actually managed to recuperate the losses within 3 years, because before they know me, they have bought an unprofitable property, lost 280,000 in CPF and have negative sale, which means no money to take back. And they will actually promise a guaranteed rental yield of 4,000 per month for 2 years, that's the reason why they bought. And they end up on the 3rd year onwards, right? They don't have any rental. They only took 2,008 after 3 to 4 months of no rental. So it's actually a big blow to their finances, and they were super duper stressed. When I met them in the year 2022, I helped them to swap to 3-bedder plus study in Water Garden. With that, actually she was very scared because she has already lost money before and she didn't know whether she could make back the money or not. But because of that, actually, it allowed her to sell off. I mean, of course, I helped her to sell in the year 2025. And at that time, we even managed to squeeze rental income from the buyer at 3,008 per month for about 4 months. And we sold it at 1.96, and we are actually the first 3-bed plus study to sell. So this means that she has a total gain, gross gain of 450,000, which is super enough for her to cover back her CPF loss of 280,000 and still see 100 plus thousand of gain. So as a buyer or upgrader, I understand sometimes we may have a lot of fear. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen in future and for 10 years to come. But what we can do is that for the next 3 to 5 years, at least we are confident to tell you we are able to help you to plan to a way that if it's not doing well, how do we make it better? If it's doing good, how do we make it even better towards your retirement goal? So of course, this time round, we are not giving any lucky draws, unlike my other webinars. But what I want to offer you is that we know that there are homeowners who are actually unsure whether they can afford, unsure whether they should upgrade, unsure how is their price, property performing and stuff. So if you are excited to know about your own property performance and you want to be given the first-hand information about your own property and how can you go about their plans, what is the market, what is the insights and all this, you can actually scan this, and we are giving up to a limit of 30 first sign-ups. So again, if you have already have this, congratulations. If you don't have it, you are able to sign up for this. We are only limiting to the first 30. That includes my YouTube live participants. So do take this time to scan this and register for your own property. The previous time I gave it out as a lucky draw, but this time round I'm giving out to the first 30. Okay, so let me continue. My name is Kelly, and if you have not followed my YouTube channel, you can type Live for Home SG, click like and subscribe, and be reminded of, or rather be notified of new contents that I'm putting out. And if you are a TikTok user, follow me at Kelly Lin at Live for Home SG. And if you want to know more about what I do, you can scan this QR code for what I do to describe, to tell you more about my mission and everything. Then also, you can find me in Facebook under Live for Home SG, as well as my own personal Facebook profile under Kelly Lin. I have been a consistent achiever in PropNext, and I also believe that we are able to handle any kinds of portfolio. So with this, is there any questions that you guys have? Wow, very long today, yeah. Any questions that you guys have? This is 2026 market direction. Any questions that you guys have? Otherwise, I see familiar names there. If you want to reach out to me, PM me directly, or if not, I will hit you up. I will call you also. No questions. Great. Very nice. So the best property decisions are not made by chance. They are made by choice with the right strategy. With this, I end my day, and thank you for listening and staying till the end. I'm so proud of all of you. And feel free to ask me if you have any questions offline. Have a great day.